Britain's housing crisis never leaves the headlines. There just aren't enough homes for people who need them. Over 200,000 properties are lying empty, whilst families sit on waiting lists. And despite rising rents, millions of tenants are still living in shocking conditions. I'm Matt Allwright, and I'm joining teams across the UK to tackle this scandal head-on, helping those in need of a decent place to call home, turning detective to investigate some of these forgotten properties, to discover what lies behind the door. It's getting harder and harder to find a safe and secure place to call home. And that means the work of councils, charities, and even developers is more crucial than ever in providing much-needed homes for people, whoever they are and whatever their situation. In my case file today, I investigate a property overwhelmed with rubbish.
It's difficult to imagine calling this a home.
A property empty for 5 years starts to give up its secrets.
We've got bank records here and some details of stocks and shares, I think some ISAs as well. These are definitely going to be helpful.
And a housing inspection in Liverpool reveals a potential fire trap.
It looks like we've got polystyrene ceiling tiles. If there was a fire in this room, they're going to knock out some black, acrid smoke.
It's a scandal to see any empty building left to fall derelict when it could be transformed into desperately needed housing. And with over 1 million people on housing waiting lists in the UK, you can't ignore any property, even if it hasn't always been a home. Barking and Dagenham in East London, an area really feeling the pressure when it comes to housing. But the local council has been looking at new ways to help ease those pressures, and they've set their sights on the high street. They're pioneering a scheme with a housing charity to transform empty spaces above shops into homes. Councillor Darren Rodwell is the leader of Barking and Dagenham Council, who've just taken on another property in the borough. So I'm meeting him for a look around.
Darren, how are you?
How you doing? You all right?
Yeah.
See you.
I might pass on the cuppa if he offers, though. So, a little bit of work still to do on this one.
Yep, it's only just come into our programme, but you know, it's an exciting space.
So, tell me about the sort of need there is in Dagenham for spaces like this, for people to occupy in the middle of communities.
Like every London borough, we're suffering with the housing crisis, i.e. we haven't built housing for about 40 years in any real numbers across the whole of London. So of course there's a need. There's 5,000 people on our waiting list.
With figures like that, bringing homes above shops back into use makes total sense.
Spaces like this get neglected over years. I mean, just looking in this room today, and I haven't ever been in here, but the paint colour, the fact that it's Artex, says to me the last time this was actually lived in was probably in the 1970s. So it's a really important thing that we are doing.
But there's another potential benefit to this scheme. Everybody talks about the death of the high street, how hard retail is taking things at the moment, and is this the answer to stick people right in the heart of a community, you know, who are maybe starting their journey through homes and properties and that sort of thing, and saying, actually, you can be customers and you can live here as well?
Exactly. What we wanting to see across every high street in the country is good quality homes where local people will buy their goods locally and actually start making a community. If we've got the amenities where the community is, they will link together. And that's what we're doing with these projects.
Well, there's a lot to do here, Darren, so if I were you, I'd get your suit off, I'd roll your sleeves up, and there's at least a bit of an afternoon's plastering here at the very least.
If you ask my wife, though, you'll know that I'm no good at DIY, and actually I leave it to the clever people.
I love the idea of bringing old flats above shops back into use. This one will be providing 4 self-contained bedrooms when it's finished. But right now, it's stuck in a bit of a time warp. How about a little competition, though? 3 fantastic prizes to be won. Win a brand new Ford Ka 1.3, brand new. Or a second prize, a holiday in Florida. or third price bicycles for a family of 4. Don't write in. I have a feeling this may have expired by now. I'll be honest, if it was me, I'd replace the carpets. I do think it's not the right colour for me. I feel like they've seen better days. Purple room, they're nothing if not patriotic. We have a jigsaw of the Queen here, who will be overseeing all the work personally. Well, maybe not. The person who is looking after the work is Gareth Hepworth from charity Habitat for Humanity. In partnership with the council, his team's been transforming another property above a shop just down the road.
When the building's finished, it will be leased to the local authority who will use it to house people in need of housing.
We're not going to put too many wall units up, just in the corner.
Yeah.
I thought that'd be it, really.
That's good.
Projects like these aren't just providing valuable homes. Gareth uses local people looking for hands-on experience to help gain their trade qualifications.
You're going to look that up and I'm going to knock this in. That's better. It's a lot better now.
I've learnt quite a lot. I've learnt how to make stud walls, how to flush, make things flush. When I was younger, I used to build like stuff in my house, so I've wanted to carry on doing it.
We look to give them an opportunity to develop their work skills. They also learn what it's like being on site. And it's really just what reality's like, not what you're taught.
I understand the end is now in sight for this particular project, a space that previously had sat empty for 25 years. Gareth, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. It's good to see you. This is a big change, isn't it?
Yes.
It's looking and feeling so much more like a home, isn't it? Somebody's going to be very comfortable here.
Yeah, we hope the people who move in will find it a home, not just a place to stay.
The buzz is going on outside. They're never going to be bored. There's always going to be something to look at. And, of course, that means amenities and things that are going to make their lives as easy as possible. Can we do the tour?
Yes, of course we can.
OK. The plan, when complete, is to offer 3 comfortable, modern rooms for people. But we're not talking your standard bedsit here.
So this is the first bedroom we've created. It's a small space there that will be kitted out as a bathroom and shower room. They have a shared kitchen and living room at the front, and that will be a sort of communal hub for the 3 people living in this property.
If people end up renting on the private sector at that level, very often they don't have shared space, do they? Because they have their own bedrooms with a locked door. Yeah. I'm thinking about an HMO, basically.
Yes, this is an HMO, but it's done well.
An HMO is a house in multiple occupation. More than 3 unrelated people living separately in the same property.
They are able to interact with each other in a comfortable, well-run, clean space.
Why is that important?
Because one of the problems in our society is isolation. And this is one way of giving people the opportunity to interact with others.
I love the thinking behind this project. Not only are they helping the housing crisis, they're tackling so much more in the process. Oh, yeah, so another really light room, isn't it? Really, yes. Really airy. I'm interested, from your point of view, Gareth, what do you get from completing these projects?
It's a sense of giving someone a place to call home. It's a sense of satisfaction that we've actually done what we say we'll do. That's what we get out of it as a charity. That's what we're here to do.
So this newly refurbished and spacious flat will be housing 3 new tenants after previously sitting empty for 25 years. Well, this high street isn't dying, it's bustling, and it's about to get 3 new residents who are customers at the same time. If retail is struggling and it's freeing up more space, why not repurpose it as homes for people who need to be close to things at that time in their life? Brilliant. There are all sorts of reasons why a property can be left empty. One is because the owner has died and relatives need to be traced. That can leave much-needed homes empty and in limbo. And that's when probate researchers get involved to investigate who stands to inherit. As our next case shows, where there's a will, there's a way. In West London, this 1-bedroom ground floor flat has been lying empty for the past 3 years after the owner died. The case has now been handed to probate genealogist Richard from Anglia Research. It's his job to track down and help relatives of the deceased claim their inheritance, including any property.
This property has been particularly difficult to deal with because of the length of time that it's sat empty. Various associations and authorities have been trying to track down owners because nothing has been happening with it.
Finally in contact with distant relatives who've granted him access, Richard can now take a major step forward.
What we hope to achieve is be able to find details relating to the ownership of the property and also financial records and anything that will help speed up the process of probate, which hopefully will then get the property back on the market quickly.
Time to get inside and have a look at the flat.
OK, so immediately it looks like the property has been broken into at some point.
The question is, what will Richard find behind the door? It's a mess, with a mountain of unopened post.
The pile of post here that's scattered around, nobody's made any attempt to go through it to look for any paperwork of interest. So this pile of paperwork here and letters really has to be taken away and sorted through because there could be valuable information in there.
Things aren't much better in the living room.
It smells very musty in here, quite damp. There hasn't been any ventilation for some time.
It's as if time has suddenly stopped. But despite sitting empty for 3 years, amongst the personal possessions, there are still poignant signs of a life lived in here.
So although everything is quite cluttered and it's in a bit of a mess, the actual property is in a good condition. There's no cracks in the wall, there's central heating. Once it's cleared out, it'll make a good home for somebody.
But before that can happen, Richard needs to track down one crucial document.
Deeds are the most important thing because that allows us to sell the property. Without the deeds, the process of applying to the land registry to register the property can take 9-10 months, so that can really delay the process.
I don't envy Richard's job. Weeding out one single document amongst all this is like searching for a needle in a haystack. And a dusty one at that. But it's not long before Richard's made some progress.
We've got bank records here and some details of stocks and shares, I think some ISAs as well. Nothing relating to the actual property yet, but these are definitely going to be helpful because the more information we've got on assets, the quicker the probate process can be achieved.
As well as paperwork, part of Richard's job is to keep an eye out for any potentially valuable assets that may have been left in the flat. And he might just have struck gold.
I found some old coins that's sitting here on the bed in a box, but they can go to a coin expert just to have a valuation. There may be a gem in there that might be worth quite a lot of money.
So far, however, there's no sign of those elusive property deeds. With no obvious office area in the flat, where else would you file all your paperwork? Oh, of course, the kitchen.
There's some more interesting paperwork in the filing cabinet. We found details of mortgage and ground rent and management fees for the property, so this is really helpful. It's surprising how much paperwork there is in these filing cabinets relating to our life and financial records, and it's really sort of information that should have been collected 4 or 5 years ago when she passed away.
Had the information been gathered earlier, then perhaps the flat wouldn't have sat empty for all this time. But for Richard, nothing about this case has been straightforward, starting with that outdated will.
Unfortunately, everybody who she had left money to in that will had passed away because the will was made in the early 1960s.
Tracking down any remaining relatives has been a painstaking process.
When looking for the family, we had to go through all the records of birth, marriage and death, all those indexes, historical records, electoral registers, really starting with the deceased and working back to their parents and then their parents' parents. In this instance, nobody could be found in the UK, so we had to cast the net a bit broader.
After a global search, distant relatives of the owner were finally found in Australia. Not only did they receive a surprise inheritance, but perhaps something more valuable too.
For a lot of people, being able to see their family tree is more important, especially if they live overseas and knew their family came from England but really had no knowledge. They can now have a family tree and see exactly where they came from.
Well, there's no sign of those elusive property deeds, but Richard does have plenty of paperwork to sort through back at the office. Before he can, he's been instructed by the Australian relatives to obtain a valuation of the property from local estate agent Mark.
Hello, is it Mark?
Yes, Richard?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Mark from Mike and Everett.
Hi, coming in. Sorry, it's a bit of a mess.
No worries, no worries.
It's quite light.
Yeah.
But a bit cluttered at the moment, but that will be sorted before it goes on the market.
I mean, with the amount of stuff in here, it still feels like a really good-sized bedroom, so yeah, that'll be attractive.
If Mark likes what he sees, it could be back on the market as a home within weeks.
Main living room.
Okay, so this is lounge stroke diner. Nice big windows. Not bad ceiling height for this age of property.
Is that a good selling point, is it?
Yeah. Everyone wants nice, light, airy rooms.
There's damage to the door. We'll have to get that door replaced as well.
Yeah.
So I think any potential buyer will be expecting the property to be secure, won't they?
First impression's quite important.
And speaking of first impressions, what does Mark think?
I think someone's going to come into this property and they're literally just going to completely overhaul it. New kitchen, new bathroom. Central heating looks okay, but you're going to need to look at the boiler, the electrics, and someone's going to come in and put their own stamp on it with regard to the decoration.
Despite being empty for 5 years and needing a bit of work, this one-bedroom flat in West London still has plenty going for it.
So in the current market, I would put a valuation on this property in its current condition, probably around 265 to 270.
Well, that sounds like a result for this long-neglected flat.
I often think that a property should have a soul as well. It's not just bricks and mortar, and when someone does move on, you do feel like that soul has left the property. The way you turn that around is that you know that you're going to be selling that to a new family coming in, and the new soul comes in, and yeah, everything goes full circle. Cheers, Richard. Take care.
Bye-bye.
It's a positive valuation and a useful visit for Richard. Hopefully those deeds will be somewhere in that pile of paperwork, taking him one step closer to getting this property sold to a much-needed new owner.
It's a great property. The estate agent was really pleased with it. It seems, an ideal first-time property for somebody. It's a nice feeling to know that it will be back on the market and have somebody living in it shortly.
Keeping older people secure and happy in their homes for as long as possible is sometimes not as easy as it sounds, especially when the resident in question might be struggling or has been suffering from ill health. The role of a housing officer isn't all about bricks and mortar. Often the challenge is to help deal with the more human side of housing, where a tenant might need some extra assistance to enjoy their home. Here in Surrey, Hyde Housing Association officer Laura Bond has been working with a tenant who's been struggling to come to terms with a destructive problem that's threatening not just to damage his home, but those of his neighbours too.
So what is the problem with his property?
It's just absolutely full of stuff and rubbish. General belongings, rubbish. He can't cook in the property, so it's a concern for his general welfare, his mental health, and also his safety.
Laura's been engaged in a long-running dialogue with the tenant, but today she seems confident there's been a major breakthrough.
I tried to get in touch with the resident, and he's initially said, "No, I'm not going to let you in," and was quite sort of strong about that. Eventually let us in, got there, and he was actually really nice gentleman, but obviously had got himself in a situation where he didn't know what to do about it.
But then you guys can step in and offer some help.
Yes.
You really have to admire how hard Laura's worked to get to this point with the tenant. And I'm hoping we're going to get the result we need today. The tenant has allowed us to inspect his property. It's only small, so I'm going in alone. But as soon as I do, the scale of the problem becomes clear. With what looks like years of refuse piled high, almost to the roof, I can barely even squeeze through the door.
So we've got a one-bedroom flat. So I think we've got a bathroom here. We've got a living room there. And it might even be a bedsit. I think that might be living room and a bedroom there. The living room is absolutely chock-a-block. Have a look at that. we're right up, almost to the ceiling. As you can imagine, the smell in here is very strong. As soon as we opened the door, there were flies everywhere. This is pretty extreme.
It's hard to believe someone's still able to live in here. I also have to wonder what it must be like for the neighbouring residents. Of course, Laura has a responsibility for their well-being too. But I'm not sure where she's going to start.
There's no floor space here at all. They're just full of, well, stuff. Clothes and bottles, cans, everything from a life, but just accumulated, obviously, over some time.
There's evidence everywhere of someone trying to lead some kind of life here, but I can't get my head around the day-to-day reality of what it must be like.
It's difficult to imagine calling this a home, coming back to this place. I mean, there's no space here. I can't see a space to sleep. I think there's possibly a bed over the other side, over this hill of debris. Maybe a space to sleep there. You know, the first time that you come into a place like this, it's really staggering, upsetting, disturbing. And, you know, it just makes you think there are people like the tenant here who are living this way full-time, who maybe, you know, we don't know about, whose homes are going to stay like this. I'm going to have to get out of the chair.
I can't help wondering how the tenant's been able to function on a daily basis with his place in this condition. Although he's asked not to be identified, he has agreed to talk to me about his situation and his relationship with the housing association that's been trying to offer a way out.
Tell me a bit about how you came to be in this part.
Right. I used to work on an estate.
Some maintenance work?
Yeah, yeah. And I had an accident which damaged my shoulder. The person I worked for basically said, you know, if you're not working for me, you can't live here anymore. And then when that stopped, I had a bit of scrabbling around trying to find somewhere to live, and I just fell into a total depression.
Yeah.
This flat came up. Eventually had the operation on my shoulder, and at which point I couldn't lift anything for 2 or 3 months. And that's really when it started to get into that state.
There are people there that could have helped you, so
yeah, I
the
know,
Housing Association.
I know, I didn't... Too embarrassed to ask them.
Yeah. Is there a degree of fear there?
Yeah, the degree of fear of the Housing Association finding out about it. If Laura hadn't been so persistent, nobody would have known even now. I'm absolutely disgusted with myself for the way it's seen. But it got to the stage whereby it was just too much there for me to cope with.
It's a sobering illustration of just how quickly a person's life can spiral out of control. But in some ways, this tenant's been lucky in that Laura, Hyde's housing officer, wasn't prepared to give up on him, no matter how difficult life became.
How do things work in the flat? I mean, because I was trying to...
Yeah, I just literally go in, crash on the bed.
Yeah.
So I've got the telly round there and computer and everything in there, so...
So that's, as I walk in, you know,
Yeah.
it goes up into kind of a hill. And the other side of that?
No, around the corner is my bed and telly and that.
Yeah.
So...
And that's gradually built up over time?
Yeah.
And how long a process has it been, would you say, since...
8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
So that build-up's 8 years of life all around you?
Yeah.
8 years is a long time to remain lost in your own flat, especially after your world's collapsed around you.
Do you feel that this is the point?
Yes, yeah.
That you can do something about it?
Yeah, this is the point where we can start to get sorted.
I'm really happy that, you know, there's a point now where things can change for you. And, you know, I hope it works out.
Now the tenant has acknowledged there is a problem and is willing to let Laura and the team from Hyde help, there's a really good chance of getting him and the property back on track. And just a few weeks later, contract cleaners have been hard at work, clearing the flat of all its debris. With the skips filled, it's time for it to receive a very deep clean. And the tenant can't wait to show Laura his new home.
Hi, how are you?
All right.
Good. Wow, look at this. Amazing.
Yeah.
No wonder Laura's so surprised. The last time we were here, the hallway was so cluttered it was difficult to even open the front door. But now, thanks to the hard work of the cleaners, you can walk inside and actually see the rooms ahead of you. It's almost like looking at a totally different property. And in the kitchen, where it looked impossible to prepare even the most basic of meals, the transformation is nothing short of amazing. The worktops and floors are completely cleared and now ready for action. The bathroom was also inaccessible, covered with grime and debris, and now, well, you can see the change for yourself. It's an amazing achievement from both the cleaners and the Housing Association to arrange such a big difference. But perhaps the biggest transformation is in the main room, which was also serving as the tenant's bedroom. Previously, there was barely enough space to sleep amongst the mountains of rubbish, and you'd dread to think the effect it could have been having on his health. Now, the room's completely clear. For Laura, the new look flat represents much more than just a deep clean. It's a demonstration of what can be achieved by working alongside a tenant in need. And for the tenant himself, the changes present an opportunity to break free from the prison of the past. It's a fresh start.
Be back to being home again.
Yeah,
Be able to come back here and relax, and
Yeah.
I think it will make a lot of difference for you, won't it?
It has already.
And we're not just going to stop. We're going to be
No,
there for anything you need.
I've actually learnt that housing officers aren't just there to chase you for the bad things.
No, absolutely not.
No.
No, we don't want anyone to lose their tenancy, and if there's things that we can do to help you, then
Yeah, I've found that out.
yeah, then we'll do them. So yeah, I'm really pleased. I genuinely didn't think that we would get to this point, and if we did, that it would take considerably longer than it's taken. We've given him a fresh slate to start with. We will continue to support him, and we've built up a really good relationship, and he said that he trusts us now to help him, and that to the point that he said if anyone else was in this situation, I'd urge them to contact their landlord and ask for help if they have got themselves into that position.
Well, I'm pleased to report that thanks to Laura and the team, the tenant is still living happily and rubbish-free in the property, and even has a brand new fitted kitchen, bathroom and heating system. The tenant feels their life has really changed for the better. We live in a country with laws that should ensure that rented housing meets basic standards. But that means councils need to be ready to act at a moment's notice if they suspect tenants are being put at risk by landlords who appear to be placing profit before safety. Liverpool, a city with over 50,000 privately rented properties, many of them old terraced housing stock. Today, City Council housing officers Andrew, Laura and James are visiting this two-bedroom terrace house, occupied by a mum of 3 kids with another on the way. They're investigating reports of some unwelcome visitors.
We had a complaint for rodents in this property, so we're going to come along, have a look at the issues, see what the landlord's done to control this rodent problem, and is there anything more that needs to be done. And obviously we'll do a full inspection in terms of the licence as we go forward in the property.
First glance, no alarm bells ringing.
To me, it's clean, it's tidy. The tenant's trying to do the best with what they've got, you know.
Andrew soon spots what looks like a potential hazard.
Obviously here we've got a socket which is damaged at the side, and it's obviously got some sort of gaffer, you know, elephant tape on it. I suspect that's been put on to prevent the children going anywhere near it, you know. It's not the greatest job.
With small children in the house, it's not ideal at all. And that's before the tenant, who doesn't want to be identified, points out the reason for her complaint, where she believes rats are making their entrance.
Under here.
Yeah. This one is
Yeah.
Okay.
A look outside shows just how easy it's been for them to get in.
What appears to be happening here is they're rats are accessing the property and via the kitchen through this opening in the wall, which they've blocked up with some sort of like material, but it's not going to prove sufficient, really.
Nobody wants to bring up a family in a rat-infested home. And here, the problem could easily be solved.
What should have happened is there should have been some sand and cement gone in and made good, you know, when that pipe work was rerouted.
Outside in the service lane, the root of the problem is clear. And it's one the council are battling on a regular basis. Residents dumping their rubbish for days on end, creating a haven for vermin.
So, you know, as you can see, you've got bagged food waste present. So it's really ideal situation for rats to, you know, to breed and to harbour and ultimately look to access properties. See, we've got 1, 2, 3 fridges, yeah? It blights the area. The council offer a free service to take fridges away. We'll take televisions away. There's no need for residents to deposit that sort of material in the street.
While he's outside, Andrew has the chance to inspect the exterior of this house.
You know, I'm looking at the fascia boards, they're all rotted. You've got a very crude repair on this flat roof. If it's watertight now, it's not going to be watertight forever. You've obviously got a lot of timber to the bottom of the door. It's just rotted. The tenant explains to us that when it rains heavily, she gets a lot of water. Now, whether it's the weatherboard has failed, but she's saying she's getting water and it's lifted the floor tiles.
There's clearly work to be done downstairs. The question is, what's Andrew going to find upstairs in the kids' bedrooms?
This has come up here, and obviously if you're barefooted, you catch yourself on that, you rip your foot.
But that's the least of the problems. These exposed sockets right next to a child's bed could be lethal. It's shocking to think what could happen if little hands went near these. And making matters worse, Andrew's suspicions about water getting in are right.
She's got some quite bad
damp,
yeah.
I'll just try and see what these are like to the touch.
This place is an accident waiting to happen.
Another risk in here, it looks like we've got polystyrene ceiling tiles, so again, if there was a fire in this room, if they are what I suspect, you know, they're going to knock out some black, acrid smoke, which, you know, it's not the fire, it's often the smoke inhalation that kills people.
Polystyrene is highly flammable, and there are no smoke alarms anywhere in this house, or escape windows on this floor. Terrifying when you think this is where children are sleeping. Worryingly, the problem extends to the key escape route, the stairs.
This is polystyrene, you can see here, look. You know, not only have you got the polystyrene, but you've got numerous coats of gloss paint. I mean, you can see how thick the gloss is here. You've actually got it where it's, you know, it's been put on a little bit liberally, and this is the means of escape out. If the fire was that well established to the point that this becomes compromised, you know, the spread would be quick.
The family living here may not have realised they've been in a potential fire trap. The landlord has no excuse.
This has got no smoke detection. Now, the landlord knows it's a licensed property. The landlord knows they need smoke detectors. It's such a fundamental feature to put, you know, a smoke alarm in a property and maintain it. And obviously, this isn't happening here. And that increases the risk.
Instead, they found a family living in a 2-bedroom terrace house with numerous fire hazards, but no fire detection system.
We've got 3 young children. The tenant is due to give birth to a 4th child. They're all of a young age and vulnerable. It's a huge issue, you know, and having had first-hand experience of dealing with fatalities in properties, I can't hammer home enough the need for just basic fire precautions, and a landlord should understand. What we'll be asking the landlord here is, well, what measures have they done to assess the risk of fire? And what controls have they put in place to sort of mitigate that risk? I can't see any. It would be interesting to see what the licence holder has to say and in relation to breaches of conditions and the fact that they're leaving this family in a vulnerable position.
Well, the landlord says the tenants haven't paid the full rent on the property since they moved in 2 years ago. They also say the house was rewired and smoke alarms fitted a few months ago, but that the tenants have damaged or removed them. They say they've now asked the tenants to leave, but that they've refused. In the meantime, the council are working with the landlord to ensure all the issues in the property are addressed. If you pay rent for your home, it's expected that the property should be free from health hazards, and it's your landlord's responsibility to resolve any problems which could impact your safety. Problems with dodgy landlords have forced Peterborough Council to bring in a new scheme demanding all landlords have to hold a licence to rent out a property. Today I'm working with housing officers Pete Besant and David Marshall, whose job it is to police these licences.
That we have to, outline to these people in no uncertain terms that this is how we expect you to rent out a property. This is how it needs to be.
But we're not talking about creating palaces in Peterborough.
No, absolutely not.
We're talking about keeping people safe and healthy in their own homes.
We want hazard-free homes, exactly, yeah.
Right. They've dealt with this particular owner before, and now a new licence application has been made for one of his properties. Pete and David want to check that it's safe and secure for the tenant. But it's not long before I spot some telltale signs. There's a big bulge in the ceiling. It's clearly been repaired, at least once, but I'd say a number of times. Raymondus, do you still have a problem with this? You have water?
Yeah.
Water comes down now?
Sometimes like shower, little bit of flour from here.
So you have a shower upstairs and a shower downstairs at the same time?
That's not good.
That's not good.
No, we want two times be like we're living here.
Yeah.
Sit, water.
Really, standing here, you get water down the back of your neck. Time to investigate where that water might be coming from.
We're in the landing. We're seeing...
Once again,
we've got some ingress of water.
We've got repair there.
Yeah, and we've got a bit of a botch job going on here.
Should we try the bathroom?
Fine, so this
Okay,
bit...
so where we were seeing the problems downstairs, I reckon equates to either the loo or the bath plug.
Yeah.
So it's going to be underneath one of these.
Yeah.
The flooring in here feels very uneven, like it's been affected in some way.
Yeah.
And then round behind it, it's just a mess. The tiles have fallen away, which indicates quite a lot of damp behind there.
There's something else missing in this bathroom that we would ask to see. And there's evidence of what it used to be down there.
A radiator?
Yeah.
So there's no heating in this bathroom?
There's no heating in
at
this
all?
bathroom, no. Clearly there was. For whatever reason, it's been removed and capped off. So
if you put together the window that doesn't work and the lack of radiator in here, it's going to be very cold at bath time.
yeah, it's just not an inviting place. It's not encouraging people to maintain a healthy hygiene regime, is it? It's not the sort of thing you want to spend any time in.
There's no doubt that the water will cause damp and mould issues, particularly if there's no heating, but there are even greater dangers caused by that leak. If the water gets into the electrics, it could easily kill someone, and there's evidence of dodgy electrics all over the house.
So we've got an electric cable here that's running from inside the house, it looks, all the way up and round. We've then got a terminal block that's exposed, so you snag that.
Then it's exposed and you've got live electrics.
The next person to walk past it's going to get stung.
Exposed wiring like this could easily give someone a serious electric shock. The hazards in this property are really adding up. It's no wonder the council's concerned.
Can you press that fire alarm for me?
That's not working, eh? I'm almost not surprised that the place is a fire risk too. And there's even more.
The handle on this window is very loose, so I reckon in 12 months that's not going to be there that long.
Inadequate security is another hazard which makes a home unsafe for its tenants. And nearly all the windows here seem to fall way below standard. So not really secure at all. And as for the side access door...
I don't know if you can see this little metal clip, but that's the only thing stopping this door from fully opening. So anyone that's just going to pass through this door with ease
You're straight into this
Security is very poor at the back of this property, so a quick upgrade is required.
Things aren't looking good for the owner, but I'm keen to know what it's like for Raymondus to have to call this place home. What is it like to live here?
Well,
With the water and the security, how does that feel?
no, it's no problem. No, this one. Oh, still security.
Are you happy? Are you happy here?
Yeah.
You're happy in this property?
Yeah. Little bit expensive, but I happy.
Okay.
I living here 1 year, like living here. Yeah.
Raymondus might be used to it, but he's still living in a house that's a health and safety nightmare. Oh, and he's paying over £1,000 a month for the privilege. But despite everything, it seems there are people willing to put up with conditions like these. Talking to Raymondus downstairs, he said he's happy here. I mean, I don't know whether it was a language difficulty and I just didn't get the true meaning, but he said it's expensive,
Yeah.
but he's relatively happy here.
Yeah, we find that a lot.
The problem for a lot of these guys, for a lot of tenants, is that the fear of complaining and what happens to them if they complain. The licence actually says, no, there's no complaint. We are going to do this.
Yeah.
We're going to carry out these inspections because that's what we do. So that's a good answer, isn't it? That feels like that takes the onus off of the tenant to complain in the first place.
Yeah, and you know, people know that we will be here to come and look at things, and we will address them because we feel we need to address them, not because the tenant does.
One thing's for sure, this property needs sorting out, and quickly. Raymondus, maybe he is happy here. Maybe this is all, you know, he's been led to expect from accommodation from where he's been before. But nevertheless, this is our chance to put it right for whoever comes here next. There are things here that could seriously shorten your life, or could seriously affect your health. Raymondus might think any roof is better than none, but this house has at least 4 major safety contraventions: water ingress and damp, dodgy electrics, fire risks, and shocking levels of security, all of which the owner is required to sort out as a condition of his licence. So what are the next steps? It's almost a textbook example of why selective licensing is a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a perfect example, yeah. That's the sort of thing we're trying to get out of the area, the sort of management practices we don't want. And so we'll certainly pay attention to this one, get it all up to scratch, and obviously we're going to have conversations with those with an interest in the property to get them to find somebody more suitable to manage it.
Well, since the inspection, a number of improvement notices were served, and the landlord has been forced by the council to hand over the management of all of his properties to a property agent. The house has now been brought up to a decent standard, although Raymondus has moved on to other accommodation. That's it for today, but join me again next time when I'll be back on the road tackling Britain's housing scandal head-on.